With the Super Bowl just 3 days away, everyone is picking sides, like Chiefs versus Eagles. But the betting markets are focused on the more important questions, like will Travis Kelce propose to Taylor Swift if the Chiefs win?
These are important questions, like will a player cry during the national anthem, or will Kendrick Lamar bring out a surprise guest during a halftime show? The betting markets are flooded with so many opportunities for people to make or lose a lot of money.
Well, last year, 68 million Americans, so 26% of all adults in this country, bet on the Super Bowl, and it totaled $23 billion.
And since sports betting became legalized in the US, Americans have bet nearly $500 billion on sports betting, which is literally more than the GDP of Denmark.
Jeez. Last year alone, they wagered $150 billion on sports betting. It's the biggest year ever, and 1/5 of Americans placed a sports bet in the past year.
So obviously gambling and betting was illegal in the US for the longest time, but in 2018 the Supreme Court struck down the federal law prohibiting it, and since then 38 states and DC have legalized wagering on sports games.
And since its legalization, sports betting companies have flourished. I mean, we all know DraftKings and FanDuel. They're by far the biggest operators, and they each have over 3 million monthly users, and these companies are marketed heavily all over sports broadcasts.
Yeah, ESPN has actually been described as a 24/7 casino ad. And apparently, if you're watching an NBA or NHL game or something, you'll see or hear a betting reference 2.8 times per minute.
And these advertisements are proving to be very effective. So 53% of young adults said sports gambling advertisements made them likely to gamble. Seeing LeBron James or Kevin Hart on their screens promoting it makes them think it's cool and they want to do it too.
Yeah, the sports betting industry has really polished its reputation through ads recently, and it's made a really big difference. People are kind of like, can it be that wrong if it's everywhere all the time and everyone's doing it?
DraftKings. Now I know it's the Super Bowl and all, but everyone gets a free bet?
Ludicrous.
Hey, I heard Kevin's taking the under.
I'm watching you like a hawk.
Tony Hawk, like the bird.
All customers, head to the DraftKings Sportsbook app to claim your free bet now.
Because FanDuel's profit boosts every NFL game day will reward you when you're ready to act.
Go Browns, Browns, Browns.
So you won't let any hunch go to waste and make every moment more.
So while some folks see garbage, FanDuel sees treasure. We see spreads to cover, overs to hit, and chances to live bet from the first down to the final whistle. So don't just watch football this season, cherish it.
So like we said, these companies are advertising pretty intelligently. One of FanDuel's slogans is never waste a hunch, which basically says, if you know how the sport works, if you really know the game, don't waste the opportunity because it really isn't that much of a risk.
Yeah, or their slogan, make every moment more. It implies that if they bet, the game watching experience will be emotionally heightened or something.
And essentially there are 4 different types of sports betting. So there's spread, which involves betting on whether a team will lose or win by a certain margin. Then there's prop bets, which focuses on specific events like who's going to score the first shot.
Totals are also called over-under bets, and they pay off if the combined score of both teams is higher or lower than a predicted number. And then there's a money line, and that's basically just betting on who do you think is going to win.
And this whole industry is accelerating by the fact that it's online now. You don't have to go to some seedy sports bookie to place a bet. All you have to do is push a button and engage in this addictive behavior. This phenomenon has actually been coined fast food gambling.
And apps are literally designed to give you the same high as a slot machine. Action is quick and aggressive, which triggers dopamine to be released in your brain. I mean, doctors say it's literally the same thing that happens when a drug addict takes drugs or an alcoholic drinks.
And the slot machine comparison is interesting. It's because there's only seconds that pass between placing the bet and then winning or losing, which makes the experience so immersive. Apparently, bettors enter a trance-like state called the dark flow, where they become totally absorbed.
Well, before the advent of apps, sports betting was pretty slow. You could really only bet on the outcome of the game. But now experts say until you had online sports betting, nobody ever bet on whether the next pitch was going to be faster or slower than 95 miles per hour. So you're getting all these micro propositions.
And with everything being on an app, these betting companies can also reach users more easily. They have access to troves of data on their customers' behavior to keep them betting. They also ping special offers to users' phones constantly and use AI to best target people who haven't bet in a while.
Things can get dark fast. Inevitably, the bettor will enter a losing phase and they might have to chase the loss, which is really gamble in hopes of recouping what they lost. And if they can't get it back, to quote a psych study, then it causes a downward spiral, which can lead to financial or even physical harm for the person and those around them.
I decided to put it all on one bet, one horse in one horse race. And if that horse won, I would have won that money back. I had the intention to pay everybody back. If it didn't win, it had literally become a matter of life and death, and I was going to go and kill myself.
Critics of the legalization of gambling say that the Supreme Court didn't really take into consideration the detrimental impact it could have on people. Experts say gambling is the easiest type of addiction to hide. It's this fun activity until all of a sudden it's not, and you become desperate to turn back the clock because the consequences are so serious. The addiction reportedly has the highest potential for suicide attempts of any mental health disorder in the country.
Well, in states that legalize sports betting, there's been a 28% jump in bankruptcies, and net investments fell by an average of 14%. And studies found that sports bettors lose an average of $1,100 per year.
And because, like we said, all of this activity takes place on apps and it's become this social activity, young men and boys are primarily targets. So 16% of adolescents, which is boys aged 10 to 19, who bet on sports develop a gambling addiction.
To quote Representative Paul Tonko, who's spearheading a safe sports betting legislation, you have a very vulnerable audience that is being targeted. Advertising is really designed to pull you in at a tender age before you're perhaps able to manage that risk assessment.
Yeah, he's one of the co-sponsors of the Safe Bet Act, which aims to create consumer protections around mobile sports gambling and curb advertising. And it seems like Congress is taking the problem seriously. A handful of bipartisan senators indicated that they could support a federal crackdown.
Well, they heard about the lack of programs in place to help people with this addiction. This is crazy. For every dollar that states have generated from commercial gambling, 0.0009 cents were invested in problem gambling services.
Wow.
And for context, substance use disorder receives 338 times more public funding than gambling disorder.
And it's clear that finding ways to kind of help people deal with this addiction hasn't been prioritized. All of these sports betting companies have AI targeting and flashy ads. So obviously outdated forms of calling a hotline is just not enough.
Yeah, basically we just kept seeing everyone say call 1-800-GAMBLER if you need help, and that's it. So in response to the criticism, FanDuel denies that its app purposely dials up dopamine, which I didn't think it did, and points out that it is compliant with regulations. Quote, FanDuel works in strict accordance with all laws and standards set forth by each state regulator.
The Responsible Online Gaming Association, which represents FanDuel and DraftKings, believes that the companies are doing enough because they cite how the mobile platforms have wager and deposit limits and they have timeout features. FanDuel's parent company also invested $100 million in responsible gaming technology and product development in 2024.
But we are starting to see cases against these companies pop up. There have been 3 so far just this year against DraftKings. And one of the most high profile was in 2023 against DraftKings when it was hit with a class action lawsuit in Massachusetts accusing it of utilizing deceptive marketing practices.
Yes, so the lawsuit alleges that DraftKings' $1,000 bonus offer that's on its mobile sign-up page tricked new customers into creating new accounts. The suit alleges that customers didn't know that they'd only receive the bonus under specific conditions, like they had to bet $25,000 within 90 days, and it had to be bets on games where you have a 25% chance of losing.
And even if someone fulfilled those requirements, which were in unreadable small print, the $1,000 wasn't a cash bonus, it was a credit to be used for more gambling. In response, DraftKings argued for dismissal of the case and said the promotion wasn't misleading. No reasonable consumer would believe that this would result in immediate transfer of $1,000, but a judge denied their motion.
And it'll be interesting to see how a jury responds to the case if it advances to that point, if people really identify with that. And the case is led by Richard Daynard, who actually led legal battles in the 80s and 90s against the US big tobacco companies. His cases resulted in big tobacco no longer advertising to kids and cigarette manufacturers paying more than $200 billion in settlement funds to the states.
And since then, cigarette sales have fallen almost 60%. So it's powerful that this guy argues sports betting operators are just like tobacco companies, engineering their products to foster addiction through the constant stream of bonuses, promotions, and opportunities to microbet.
And the proliferation of sports betting has led to more gambling in general. So 1 to 2% of adults in the world develop a gambling disorder. And what makes it so dangerous is this false promise of spectacular success that's basically at your fingertips if you just engage.
Well, 2024 was also a monumental year for prediction markets and crypto investments. People spent millions betting on the election, even though that's a very legal gray area. So sports betting really has businesses looking around like, what's going to be the next frontier that people are going to bet on?